mode, please do it now so it would not be destructive or embarrassing. We have a child care for those of you who bring your children with you. If you can trust us to take care of them for an hour and a half, we have our ushers will help you and direct you where the children's program is taking place. Please join me in prayer. Loving Father, we thank you for bringing us together tonight. We thank you for creating an interest in our hearts and minds to learn more about your message that you have for us. We thank you for the opportunity to learn what the future holds for us. We pray that you would help us to receive the message with open heart and be willing to follow you and share your love and kindness with those around us. We thank you for our speaker, Pastor Tim Rosenberg, and we ask for your blessings over him so he would deliver your message in a powerful way. We come to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
We missed a slide, wherever it went. What do we have so far? We're looking tonight at Daniel 11. We're looking at who's the king of the north in this third and final conflict that we're living in today. From the time of Daniel, so far, in our last presentation, we looked at the time of Daniel to the end of sin and suffering in a brief overview. We noticed the king of the north and the king of the south go through phases. And Jesus was the prince of the covenant. But remember, whenever the current king of the north attacks a rising power and fails, you have a new king of the north coming on the scene that will be related to the commander who takes down the current king of the north. Well, Rome attacked Jesus on the cross. On Friday, they crucified Jesus. It looked like Rome won. How do you think Pilate and the Roman soldiers were feeling by Sunday night? Like winners? 100 Roman soldiers that had a easy weekend duty. Keep a dead man dead. For 3 days. Didn't matter 4, just 3 days. I mean, what did they have to do? Stab him and put him back down if he got up. 100 to 1. It should be pretty easy. But they failed. They went running to Pilate and the priest, and they didn't say, we won, we won. They said, you have a problem. He's alive, very alive. How'd you like to be Pilate? You agreed to have somebody killed that says he is the Son of God. So you kill him, and he comes back to life. What you going to do if you catch up to him? Kill him again? That doesn't work. If he really is God, what if he wants to get even? Can you get an idea why Pilate probably had a very miserable life for the rest of his life? Maybe that was one of the reasons he committed suicide. Because according to history, that's what happened. Well, if Rome attacked Jesus and Jesus won, you have a new king of the north coming on the scene in Daniel 11. And sure enough, that's what happens in verse 23. We're looking tonight at what power follows Rome. Historically, Rome splits just like Greece split. We had the Greek Empire split multiple ways, but Daniel only cared about 2. King of the north, Seleucid, king of the south, Ptolemy. Jerusalem gets caught in the middle. The Roman Empire splits. There are going to be 3 holy wars between the north and the south. Jerusalem gets caught in the middle. You've got Islam that comes from the south, and the Christians come from the north. And during the Crusades and after, what city was caught in the middle? Just like the Greek split. There are so many similarities. Now, here's where I get 3 conflicts. Verse 29. At the appointed time, he, the king of the north, shall return and go towards the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. So we have one that's in the middle. It's the appointed time. There's one before it, and there's one after it. There's the Crusades, there's the Ottomans, there's the time of the end where we're living. And verse 40 picks up this latter one. It says, at the time of the end. So I'm not making that up. 3 conflicts. Same north, same south, all the way through from verse 23 through 45. Patrick Buchanan said it this way. As for a climatic conflict between a once Christian West and an Islamic world that is growing in numbers and advancing inexorably into Europe for the 3rd time in 14 centuries. Let's see. How many conflicts are we in? Number 3. Matches the Bible. 14 centuries. That's from the breakup of Rome. Oh, you mean the information God gave Daniel's right? Uh-huh. Right on. Daniel's prophecy never fails. So we've noticed we have all these powers. Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, Rome, and down to divided Rome. They all come in from the north, but we're going to focus on this section right here tonight. There's a little horn that comes up among those 10 horns in Bible prophecy. That little horn is the same as the king of the north. It's the same as the man of sin in 2 Thessalonians 2, and it's the beast of Revelation 13. Different names for the same power. Somebody says, well, why doesn't the Bible just call it one name? It'd make it a lot easier. Maybe. How many names does Jesus have in the Bible? He's the rock. He's the Lamb of God. He's Emmanuel, God with us. He's Messiah. He's the Christ. He's the Rose of Sharon. It goes on and on and on. All those names describe characteristics of Jesus, don't they? Well, on the other side, it's describing characteristics of this power. It's the same idea, all right? Different names for the same power that emerged from the Roman Empire and extend all the way to the coming of Christ. we're going to look at 15 identifying characteristics for this power. They all come from Scripture. If it's going to be a fit, you have to find a power that matches all 15. 13 out of 15 doesn't work. They all have to fit. All right? So we're going to go looking for something that fits all of them. And I've only ever been able to figure out one power that matches all of them. So let's start with the first characteristic. It starts from the time of Rome and lasts all the way to when Jesus delivers his people. Let's take a look at the end-time king of the north. It starts right after verse 22. Verse 22 is talking about Jesus. The people shall be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. That was Jesus. The next verse goes into this. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully. So you get this new king of the north arising. It goes all the way to verse 45, which is the last verse in Daniel 11, and it says, yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. The next verse, Daniel 12:1, tells us what time that is. And at that time, your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. So it comes right up after the time of Christ, and it goes all the way till when Christ sets up his kingdom, delivers his people. So from Rome to deliverance. That's a long time period, isn't it? So you've got to find a power that's been around since the Roman Empire. There aren't very many to choose from. The little horn, Daniel 7, verse 8. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them. These are the horns that come up out of the dragons, or which dragon was Rome, come up out of his head. And I watched till the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. Verse 26, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. Has that happened yet? No. So it's coming from Rome. You have the breakup of Rome, the horns dividing, and it lasts until Jesus delivers his people and they get the kingdom. That's the same as the king of the north, isn't it? The man of sin, 2 Thessalonians 2. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. So in the first century, it's already at work, but it's being held under by some power. A little bit later, it's going to come up out in the open. That's the same as when the league is made in Daniel 11. And it's going to last all the way till God destroys it when Jesus sets up his kingdom. It goes from Rome all the way to deliverance. Revelation 13, the beast. I saw the beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, like a bear, like a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. That's from Daniel 7. Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and the beast comes out of it. Just like the little horn came out of it. All right? And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. That's Jesus. By the way, it's not a good idea to attack Jesus. It doesn't work out well. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So it starts from the breakup of Rome, and it goes all the way till God delivers his people, and this power is destroyed when Jesus sets up his kingdom. So it's from Rome to deliverance in all cases. Now, who is this power? Well, Luther, Calvin, Wycliffe, the Wesleys all agreed they taught the same thing. It was not politically correct in their time. That's why many of their followers were killed for these beliefs. What they taught was that the little horn, king of the north, this power, is the papal system, hear me carefully, not Roman Catholic people, many of which God calls his people in Revelation 18:4. If God says he has a people in the group, does he? Yes. Let me say it another way. Please do not leave this place saying, this guy doesn't think there will be Roman Catholics in heaven. I actually believe there will be more of them in heaven than from any other group. There have been more of them for more years. All right? So statistically, should have a pretty good showing in heaven. However, the system has been guilty of human rights violations, and the people have often been the victims of those human rights violations. So there is a huge difference. All right? The system has had trouble, but God has a people in there. Let me tell it to you this way. I believe, like I said, there will be probably more Roman Catholics in my neighborhood in heaven than anybody else. Former Catholics. There's also going to be some former Adventists, some former Baptists, some former Lutherans, former lots of things. And if you're noticing, I'm calling them all former. Because in heaven, we're simply going to be God's kids. And isn't that going to be fun? So I'm looking forward to that, all right? Now, does the papacy fit? Does it come up as described? It said, 2 Thessalonians is going to be there in the first century. Something was already developing, but it was going to be held in check until it comes out in the open. What happened to any Christian leader that started to gain a little power in the first couple of centuries? They didn't live a long time, did they? Pagan Rome kills them. But then a league was made. Constantine the Great makes a league with Christianity. Well, the papal system comes into play then. So does the papacy fit? Do they claim roots back to the first century? Yes, they do. Did they stay underground and then come up a little later? Yes, they did. When a league was made between the political and the religious powers. Now, look at what we find here. Daniel 11:23, and after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully. So Constantine, even though Christians were small in number, only 20% of the kingdom, makes a league with them. Because he noticed that these Christians would die for what they believed. He wanted people like that on his side. So he makes a league with Christianity. The papacy comes in, and they come up with a document called the Donation of Constantine. Google it, you will find the story. It is a document that gives the Pope authority to rule in Rome, wear purple, all kinds of interesting things. He gets to act like an emperor, according to the Donation of Constantine. Except, if you read the story, you will find out the Donation of Constantine was a forged document. If you base your authority to rule in Rome on a forged document that you forge, is it with deceit? Daniel's prophecy never misses. They did exactly as described. Take a look at Constantine's coin. He mints this right after he makes a league with the Christians and the papacy. It really comes out of the shadows. There's the sun, pagan sun worship. There's the cross. He's advertising on the coin that he's kind of mashing together paganism and Christianity. Except who gets more play? Remember, 80% of the empire is pagan. Let's try the right button. The guy up the middle, that's Saul, the sun god. So which gets more play, paganism or Christianity? He's a good politician. He knows how to play the odds. Here's the worst thing that happened. Well, a couple really bad things. One, paganism and Christianity got mixed up. We're still suffering from that one. Number two, for the first couple of centuries, Christians were willing to die for Jesus, but not to kill for him. And Christianity spread to the world. Then, under Constantine, he baptizes the army, and he will now kill for Jesus. How well are you going to win hearts with an army that's killing for Jesus? The mission outreach of Christianity collapsed. It didn't come back until the 16 and 1700s when the Moravians were willing to die for Jesus in large numbers again. And from there, you got the mission movements. And to this day, missionaries go into hot spots and they're willing to die for Jesus Christ. Did you catch? Christians only have real power when you're willing to die for Jesus, not when you kill for him. That should be an important take-home. Man of sin, 2 Thessalonians. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. Deceptions with lying signs and wonders. Man, there's been a lot of that through the years. It would be small but powerful. Remember, 20% of the kingdom, of the empire, but it became very powerful. For he's come up and become strong with a small number of people. The little horn, another horn, a little one coming up among them speaking pompous words. If you were to go to the Vatican tonight, you will find one of the smallest nations on this earth at just over 100 acres. Maybe some of you have a place with 100 acres, although this is California, that 100 acres is expensive here. But suppose one of you has 100 acres. You have a little more land than the Pope has at the Vatican. Which one has the power, you or the Pope? Pope does. At just over 100 acres, presidents, dictators, people all over the world come to him. Pretty powerful 100 acres. Small but powerful. Boy, that didn't miss. Be peaceable and become rich. He shall enter peaceably even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, the spoil, the riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds. Oh, he's going to come in and become rich through peaceful methods. Well, he collects all kinds of offerings through interesting methods. I won't get into those right now. I'll talk about that later. But if you were to go to the Vatican tonight, would you find a place that it's poor or rich? You don't even have to go there. Go down to Mexico. Go to the center square of most cities, and what do you find? A cathedral. The people outside are relatively poor. What's it like inside? In most of the cathedrals, it's rich. Some of the missions, they're poor. But the cathedrals are rich. It said he would amass all this riches. They did. Has a man at its head. Daniel talks about it's talking about leaders all the way through. You're seeing one leader after another. And so it has a human leader. Daniel 7:8, the little horn, and there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth speaking pompous words. It's talking about a spokesperson in the system. The man of sin should be a person. The beast, and all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Now, you always have a person in charge of the system. At this time, we have Pope Francis. Take a close look at Time magazine cover when he was elected Pope. Did they say he's a Pope for the Catholic Church? A Pope for Christianity? It's a Pope for a new world. The media already sees this guy as the major world leader. We're heading right into this prophecy, folks. It's not a figment of imagination. It's already in process. He leads attacks against the South. In verses 25, 29, and again in 40, but we'll get into that later. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the South with a great army. 11:25. At the appointed time he shall return and go towards the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. And so Islam was pushing up into the Christian world. And the Pope calls for the Crusades. And why do the nations of Europe follow the Pope? Because they're afraid of Islam and the spread of Islam. And you have the Crusades. Second conflict. The Turks are now the leader of the Islamic world. Turkish Caliphate. And the Pope calls for the Holy League, another holy war. And the nations of Europe back the Pope because they're afraid of the spread of Islam. The Pope is once again gaining in power, and the world is once again afraid of the spread of Islam. It's the third round, and it's already happening in front of you. And the media will never tell you this stuff because they don't want to see it. It predicts a time period of supremacy. In Daniel 11:24, it says, when he comes on the scene, he will have power, but only for a time. Daniel 7:25 tells you what the time is. Then the saint shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Revelation gives us the same time. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. Let's see. A time is a year. Times are 2 years. Half a time. That's 3.5 years. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. I don't know how good your math is, but that happens to be 3.5 years. He, the beast, was given authority to continue for 42 months. Oh, that's easier. That's 3.5 years. Said it a whole bunch of different ways, but it's interesting. That's not 3.5 literal years. It's 3.5 symbolic years of 360 days, because it's 42 times 30 makes 1,260. It's a symbol or a recognition that we're dealing with symbolic time. 42 months would be 1,260 years in Bible prophecy. And Pope Vigilus ascends the papal chair in 538 under the military protection of Belisarius. You see, in 533, the Pope was declared the leader of all Christianity in the Roman Empire. But there was a problem. There were some Arians that disagreed with the papacy on the divinity of Christ. They had control of the city of Rome. So the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, is the leader of all Christianity, but he's not welcome in Rome. That was embarrassing. And I'm going to add something here. Between the decree of 533 and the implementation of that decree in 538, when Justinian sends his general in to make good on his decree, something interesting happened. 536. Anybody have any clue the meaning of 536 that happened right in the middle of that? It's known as the dark year. The worst year in human history to have been alive. There were a series of volcanoes across North America and/or Iceland that went off. And Europe didn't even have summer. It snowed that year in the summertime. Crops failed. Disease was rampant. Let's see, what do people do when they're scared? They turned to God, and the papacy stepped in a time of climate change like this world has never seen. Just think about that for a moment. Ever heard of climate change? Nothing like they had. Check it. 538, decrees implemented right after major climate change. 1,260 years. Brings it to Pope Pius VI. He's imprisoned by Napoleon. In 1798, 1,260 years later, they had both church and political power, church and religion. During that time, in 1798, he, Berthier, Napoleon's general, made his entrance into Rome, abolished the papal government, and established a secular one in its place. Just happens to be 1,260 years in between them. I don't think that's an accident. So, during this 1260 years, we had all of the Crusades and all of the important parts of the conflict with the Turkish Empire, with the Holy League and all that. Interesting how that all fits. Now, change of times and law. In Daniel 11, 28, 30, and 32, it tells us that the king of the north will fight against God's covenant. In Daniel 7, the little horn, the same power, he shall intend to change times and law. Well, I'm going to look at some papal documents. Do they say they can change God's law? They do. The Pope is of so great of authority and power that he can modify, change, or interpret even the divine laws. The Pope can modify divine law since his power is not of man but of God. And he acts as vicegerent of God upon earth with the most ample power of binding and loosing his sheep. So they claim they can change God's law, except Jesus said not one jot or tittle would pass away as long as earth exists. And friends, is there anything under your feet? Then God's law is still here. All right? God says he doesn't change. The papal system says they can change it. I'm sticking with the Bible. Here's another one. Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine. Has the imprimatur of the church in it. It says, question, which day is the Sabbath? Answer, Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. That's a direct attack on God's covenant and the times. Now, that's why I'm a Sabbath-keeping Christian. I don't know what you're going to do about it, but I couldn't follow the system with that. Number 9, speaks great words or blasphemy. Man, this is all over the board for the little horn, the man of sin, the king of the north, and the beast. Starting in Daniel 11. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers nor the desire of women. That could be a reference to celibacy in the priesthood. Nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. The little horn, he shall speak pompous words against the Most High. The man of sin, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. I'm going to show you a picture of that one in a little bit. Keep that in mind. And then the beast. He was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. So the question is, what is blasphemy? In John chapter 10, verses 31 to 33, Jesus was accused of blasphemy when he claimed to be God. Except if Jesus is God, that's not blasphemy. In Mark 2, verses 5 to 7, Jesus was accused of blasphemy when he claimed he could forgive sin. Except if he is God, he can forgive sin. I don't know about you, but I'm trusting his ability to be able to forgive sin. Without it, I'm in big trouble. Really big trouble. Does the papacy claim that they are in God's place or they're God? Actually, they do. Again, Catholic documents. The Pope is of so great of dignity and so exalted that he's not a mere man, but as it were God. And the vicar of God, the Pope is called most holy because he is rightfully presumed to be such. Another one, he is likewise the divine monarch and supreme emperor and king of kings. That's a title for Jesus. Hence, the Pope is crowned with a triple crown as king of heaven and of earth and of the lower regions. In other words, if they're king of heaven, they can tell God what to do. And actually, you will see that they claim they can. The Pope is, as it were, God on earth, sole sovereign of the faithful of Christ, chief king of kings, having plenitude of power. Back to Prompto Bibliotheca, the Pope is not only the representative of Jesus Christ, but he is Jesus Christ himself, hidden under the veil of the flesh. So yes, they claim to be in that position. I told you I would show you a picture. Remember in Thessalonians it said he would be sitting in the temple as if he were God? All right, let's take a look at the picture. In the Old Testament temple, we had God's throne, the judgment seat on the Ark of the Covenant, correct? This Shekinah glory would dwell between what? The two angels, the cherubim. What's on both sides of his throne? Two cherubim. In Revelation, Jesus has the great white throne judgment scene, right? Notice, he's got Old and New Testament thrones of God combined into one. In Revelation, there are 4 living creatures around the heavenly throne. On the upper platform, there are 4 men. I do want you to notice, this is not from a Protestant, this is from Catholic television that I got it. I'd fire the art department if I was at the Vatican. However, I find that it happens over and over again as if they know what they're doing. Now, rebutting a belief widely shared by Protestants and a growing number of Roman Catholics, Pope John Paul II on Tuesday dismissed the widespread idea that one can obtain forgiveness directly from God and exhorted Catholics to confess more often to their priest. Why does he say this? Well, the book The Catholic Priest by Michael Mueller will tell you. Seek where you will through heaven and earth, and you will find but one created being who can forgive the sinner, who can free him from the chains of hell. That extraordinary being is the priest, the Catholic priest. Yes, beloved brother, and the priest raises his hand, he pronounces the word of absolution, and in an instant, quick as a flash of light, the chains of hell are burst asunder, and the sinner of God becomes a child of God. So great is the power of the priest that the judgments of heaven itself are subject to his decision. Remember, they claim to be the king of heaven, earth, and the lower regions. So, interestingly enough, one pope put Martin Luther in hell, and another pope later pulled him out. Which one would God have to obey? I would suggest neither, because God is the judge, they're not. What do you do when you have 3 popes? And there have been times where there were 3 popes at once fighting with each other. It was during that time that Martin Luther and others said, for once we agree with the Pope, because all 3 popes were calling each other Antichrist. It gets confusing. Here's my point. Don't you ever allow your church leaders in any church to claim that kind of power. There is only one being in the universe that can control absolute power. That's God. Have you ever heard this saying? Power corrupts, absolute power absolutely corrupts. That phrase was coined by a historian studying the papacy. That's where the saying came from. Number 10, it would persecute the saints. Yet for many days they shall fall by sword and by flame. Oh, that's during the Ottomans and the Reformation. Anybody tell me what happened to heretics? Killed by the sword or burned at the stake. Daniel's type of persecution or death even matches the time period. He shall persecute the saints of the Most High, Daniel 7:25, the beast. It was granted him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And during that time, huge numbers, in the multitudes of millions, were killed for disagreeing with the papal system. And most of those started out as Roman Catholics and were driven out by the church. Their crime? They wanted to follow the Bible as the authority. They wanted to go to Jesus for their own forgiveness. I remember getting an email from a faculty member of a Roman Catholic university one time. He'd been on my website, and he sent me this email, and he said, man, that presentation too, which is this one, is really hard to take. And there was a smiley face by it. I understood the hard to take, but I wasn't so sure about the smiley face. So there was more after it, so I kept reading. He said, however, I'm one of those Catholic Christians you talk about that go straight to Jesus for my forgiveness. I've had multiple Catholics tell me, thank you for differentiating between the system and the people. God knows the difference. Do you know what the good news is? God knows your heart. You know what the bad news is? God knows your heart. If you're true to him, it's good news. If you're just faking it, he knows. And that's true for everybody in every system. You see, no church saves anybody, only Jesus does. Why did so many people flee the old world and come to the new world? They were looking for religious freedom. They were fleeing from the persecution in the old place. Here, the Pope urges forgiveness for centuries of wrong. The Pope says, this is John Paul II, the Roman Catholic Church must mark the year 2000 by acknowledging its members' sins, including intolerance in the name of religion and complicity in human rights crimes. See, it's not just me that says that Pope John Paul II had to agree with it. As the second millennium draws to a close, the church should become more fully conscious of the sinfulness of her children, recalling all those times in history when they departed from the Spirit of Christ. It goes on to talk about the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, and all kinds of martyrs who died at their hands. I happen to know this. I met a couple of Catholic priests after the year 2000 that didn't get the memo. I was in Ecuador. I was doing a Bible seminar in Ecuador. It was not this seminar. Did not talk about this topic. I'm not that crazy. You see, Ecuador is by constitution Roman Catholic, which means the local priest has great political power and can do all kinds of things. I didn't present this topic. I didn't want to leave town that fast. But we were presenting enough other things, I and the other guy that were doing the presenting, that you could read between the lines. And I will tell you, priests in South America have a bad word that they use, evangelico. If you are not Roman Catholic, you're an evangelico and you're a hated group. And it doesn't matter if you're Baptist, Pentecostal, Adventist, whatever you are, you're an evangelico. And they don't like them. Figured that out one night. Here's how it happened. Somewhere around 1 or 2 in the morning. 4 men, 3 of them in camouflage outfits with assault rifles, the 4th man in a business suit with a pistol. They paid a visit to our hotel owner. Small hotel. We were using the rooms in her hotel and the banquet hall for our seminar. There's this pounding on the door. She comes thinking there might be a late night guest, and she's met by the barrels of 3 assault rifles. They're demanding that she get her keys and go open the hotel rooms. We're sleeping in those rooms. They missed my room, but my 2 teenage daughters were part of the half of our team that got a visit that night. My daughters hear a commotion in the hallway, and they hear the hotel owner's voice, who is a friend of ours. Well, we'd become friends in her hotel. We were there for 3 weeks. And they could hear the hotel owner saying, they're only children. They're niños. Leave them alone. My daughters know Spanish. I don't. They heard the commotion, and they heard the order to open the door. They heard the key go in their lock. And as the door began to open, the lights flashed on, which means you can't see too well, as men with assault rifles burst across the room, aimed right at their faces. What a way to wake up. My younger daughter pulls the sheets over her head. A few minutes later, when my daughters got to my room, my older daughter says, like sheets will stop bullets. And my younger daughter said, but I'd never see them coming, would I? They both have done other mission trips. In the morning, we had a talk with the hotel owner. They had put a seal on the front door, making it illegal to open any front door. They had seals on each of the front doors. You would go to jail for opening a front door, but the back door was open, and as long as we're in the hotel, those doors are to remain sealed. It's a pretty clear message they didn't like us. We talked it over, and the hotel owner said, the real news is the Catholic priest sent the police, they were police officers, to intimidate you and drive you out of here. He's not happy with you. He said, okay, tell you what, you take a message back to the priest and the police, try that again and we'll make an international scene out of it. I knew something. Ecuador was switching from sucre, their paper money, to US dollars. They were almost done with the deal. They didn't need an international scene with US citizens. I figured if Paul could be used being a Roman, I can use being an American. And in the morning, we said, we're going to go down to the embassy and talk about it. My wife and I got in a taxi cab. Didn't hide where we were going. We're going to go down to the embassy. We figured people were watching us. You know they were. We got in there. We went down to the embassy. We talked about other business, never mentioned what happened overnight. We didn't want the U.S. Embassy to tell us to leave. So we finished up with our business, came back. We put a guy out front with a sign that said, hey, the front doors are sealed, the back doors open, come on in, we're still open. And we finished our meetings. They were afraid for an international scene. A year or so later, I was in another city in Ecuador. And in that city, I watched as the Catholic priest riled a mob up with a bullhorn to drive me out of town. We finished that meeting too, but here's how that happened. The priest went to the owner that was renting us a large building. He said, I'm starting a meeting in your building tonight. He said, not possible. I've already rented it to a group. He said, they're evangelicals. Break your agreement. And this Catholic businessman looked at his priest and said, but I'm a man of my word and I never break my word. And we finished that meeting too. I'm just telling you, when they can, they will still use force. I've experienced it. I had a Muslim one time tell me, Tim, you better be careful. The Christians will kill you for saying this stuff. My response to him was, when I'm in the territory of the king of the north, I'll keep my eyes on the king of the north. When I'm in the territory of the king of the south, I'll keep my eyes on the king of the south. We've been around automatic weapons from both sides. They both play mean. Number 11, deadly wound healed and worldwide power. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. So he's going to go down, but not all the way out. He's coming back. And the Pope was taken into captivity and died in captivity in 1798. It was the longest time period without a Pope in history right after his death. But in 1929, Mussolini signs an agreement with the papacy. And they once again have political power over that little tiny country of the Vatican. Not exactly a nice character to do business with, is it? Mussolini. Friend of Adolf Hitler's. Here's what the San Francisco Chronicle said that night. The Roman question tonight was a thing of the past, and the Vatican was at peace with Italy. In affixing the autographs to the memorable document, healing the wound, extreme cordiality was displayed on both sides. Don't expect the San Francisco Chronicle to use biblical wording accurately today's world, but in 1929 it was a different story. So the papacy was on its way back up, and then John Paul II comes in with a very charismatic personality, and he takes the papacy up to higher levels. Benedict is kind of a placekeeper, and Francis, the media loves him. Here's proof. But shrewdly, methodically, and with a showman's flair, the soft-spoken 78-year-old Argentinian Jesuit priest named Pope Francis showed Thursday that he is running to become president of the planet. Why would they say that? Well, he had just gone to the UN. Putin was there. Obama was there. World leaders are there. Who gets the press coverage? Pope Francis. Who's got the heart of the world? Francis. Oh, I'll show you Tuesday night. But that's just a little over a year after the Pope called for war against radical Islam. And got it within 36 hours. Let's see. At the time of the Crusades, the world followed the Pope because they were afraid of the spread of Islam. At the time of the Turks, the world followed the Pope because they were afraid of the spread of Islam. He calls for war and gets it within 36 hours because the world's afraid of the spread of Islam. We're in the third round. And this guy's already being looked at by world leaders as the major leader. It's not a figment of my imagination. Number 12, it would be diverse or different from other kingdoms. Daniel 7, the 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. So, this little horn power is not just going to be political, it's going to be different than the others. It is political and religious. It will subdue 3 kingdoms. The area that the papacy controlled was controlled by basically 10 barbarian tribes. 3 of them, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, and the Heruli, were Arian. They were eliminated to make room for it, and the prophecy said 3 of the 10 horns would be eliminated to make room for it. Yeah, that happened too. 666, you ever heard of that one? Oh, people get all bent out of shape about this one. It's one of the least important of all the indicators. I mean, have you ever done prison ministry and you find a guy with 666 tattooed between his knuckles? It's supposed to mean he's really mean and tough. Turn it over, he's just 999. I can tell you he's not big enough and tough enough. Has he been around since the fall of the Roman Empire? No. He hasn't. Some people say, oh, you can take, and here's wisdom, let whom has understanding calculate the number of the beast. It is the number of a man. His number is 666. You can take Ronald Reagan and you can take the value of his letters and you can get 666. Or you can take Gorbachev and you get 666. My question is, which one of those guys was alive at the fall of the Roman Empire? Neither one. Which one is alive when Jesus comes? Well, Gorbachev has a chance, but Reagan doesn't. By the way, you heard much from Gorbachev lately? I don't think it's him either. This is the only system that's been there this whole time, is the papacy. And you take a title. This is a title that the papacy used for themselves in the donation of Constantine. It's used hundreds of times in Latin papal documents as their title. Vicaris Filii Dei. I mean, I've got the documentation. I've got a whole book full of it, of this title being used by the Pope. V is a 5, I is a 1, C is 100, A0, R0, I1, V5, 0, S0, that's 112. F0, I1, L50, I1, I1, 53, D500, E0, I1, total them up, it's 666. The title that they go by. Interesting. So I think it's the least important one, but it does fit. But it doesn't matter if it fit if none of the rest of them did. The dragon's throne, their capital. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Well, ultimately, the dragon is Satan, but in Revelation, it's also Rome. Take a look at Revelation 12 here. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. Okay. When Jesus was born, did Satan try to kill Jesus? Remember all those soldiers that went to Bethlehem and killed all the babies? Those were Roman soldiers that killed those babies. Remember at the cross? What kind of soldiers were those that actually did kill Jesus? Roman soldiers. Satan is working through Rome. LaBianca, professor of history, University of Rome, says, to the secession of the Caesars came the secession of the pontiffs in Rome. When Constantine left Rome, he gave his seat to the pontiff. Rome, the city of Rome, is given over to the papacy. They get the seat or the capital of the pagan Roman Empire. It's theirs. It's still there today. Take a look at this coin. Remember when Jesus was asked if you should pay taxes to Caesar? He says, whose face is on the coin? Tiberius. You flip the coin over and look at the title Tiberius is going by. Pontiff Maxim. Ever heard that title before? That's the title the Pope goes by. Pontiff Maximus. It's the title of Rome's high priest in pagan times, the great bridge builder. But get this. That's the title of the man who kills Jesus ultimately. He's the emperor of the Roman Empire that kills Jesus. That would be the last title I'd wanted to pick up as a Christian leader. But they do. Now, I end up in agreement with Luther, Calvin, Wycliffe, and the Wesleys because it fits the Bible. But again, not all Roman Catholic people, because God calls many of them his people in Revelation 18:4. Take a look at this papal coin. You have John 23, Pontiff Maximus, all right? So you've got the PM there for that. It's his title. You flip it over. This is 1959 papal coin. You have a woman holding a cup and a cross. Interesting symbol. Around the outside edge, it says City del Vaticano, Vatican City. It's their 100-lira coin. You would assume that this woman would be like the bride of Christ in Ephesians 5, or the pure woman, the church, or the bride of Christ in Revelation 12, or maybe Mary, the mother of Jesus, sometimes called Queen of Heaven by them. However, there's some indicators on the coin that maybe not so. Maybe not so. Underneath of it, it says Fides, which is actually the name of a pagan goddess. Around the outside edge, it says City del Vaticano. Yeah, I already said that, right? Yeah. However, you look up the meaning of the word Vaticano, or Vaticano. You will find that the word Vaticano means prophecy, the city of prophecy. With the city of prophecy wrapped around the outside of it, I'd be careful what symbol I put on the inside of it, because it doesn't match any of those on the screen. It matches this one. Revelation 17. Take a look. So he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now take a look at the woman. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. Oh, the Ephesians 5 and Revelation 12 women are in white. They're spotless. This one is in scarlet. Not good. And adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication, and on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. Well, who was it that killed all those people over the years? It was the papal system. They call themselves the Mother Church. It's like they don't know what they're saying, or maybe they do. I don't know, but it always matches the bad stuff, what they say about themselves. So if you look at the 2 women in Revelation, the pure woman and the woman in scarlet, which one matches? Well, the woman with the cup, right? Interestingly, the woman in white, Revelation 12, hides in the wilderness. Revelation 17, John is taken back to the wilderness, and he sees a woman now dressed in scarlet. And he is greatly amazed and shocked. Why? God's church starts out pure, ends up fallen. Check your history. That's what happened. That's why so many people hate religion today. It's still a real issue. And the fallen side matches the coin. Well, let's take a look at the cup. Because in Revelation it says the cup is full of abominations, right? So he brought me to the door of the north gate of the Lord's house. And to my dismay, women were sitting there weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? Turn again, you will see greater abominations than these. So weeping for Tammuz is an abomination. All right? How many of you know much about Tammuz? A little bit. All right, here you go. Tammuz is one of the pagan gods. His mother is hit with a beam of light. She's the fertility goddess. She's hit from a beam of light from the sun. She becomes miraculously pregnant and has a virgin birth. Her son, Tammuz, is now the son of God, the son of the sun god. He goes off on a wild boar hunt in his early adulthood. He's killed on the wild boar hunt, and they weep for him for 40 days, and he comes back to life at the spring equinox. Sound vaguely familiar? His mother's name is Ishtar, from which we get Easter. A mix of paganism and Christianity. But we also get 40 days of Lent, 40 days of weeping for Tammuz. But it's not over yet. The greater abomination. So he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and there at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of the Lord and their faces towards the east, and they were worshiping the sun towards the east. So when you come into the temple of God, from the doorway you are facing west. Your table of showbread, the 7-branch candlestick, the altar of incense, a curtain, and behind is the Ark of the Covenant. And you would bow down and worship towards the west. These guys get to the door of God's house, they turn around and bow down, giving their rear ends to God, and bow towards the east to the rising sun. And God called that the greater abomination. Now, Revelation 17 says the lady's cup is full of abominations. Take a close look at that cup. What does the papacy put in the cup? The rising sun, worshiping towards the rising sun, the greater abomination. I'd fire the art department. But they do it over and over. I was hiking the Appalachian Trail as a kid. I hiked it from Georgia to Pennsylvania twice in my high school years. It's 1,000 miles. It takes 2 months to walk that far. And I'm hiking along, and I'm headed northbound, and off to the east, I'm on a mountain ridge one day, and it's about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the sun's partway up the sky, and I come across a mountain clearing with logs laid down like benches, 3 crosses in front, open valley out below, facing east. And I realized, probably within the last week or two, had been Easter. And a group of Christians had been gathered together up on the mountain, worshiping towards the rising sun, which God had called an abomination. That's the first time it hit me, looking there quietly on that mountaintop with that sun in the distance in the east. I am not opposed to resurrection celebrations. Jesus was resurrected at Passover. That is in the springtime. Satan was able to figure that out on the symbolism and put a counterfeit in there trying to take away from it. However, if you are in charge of a resurrection celebration, I dare you to try something. Boy, will you get in trouble. But here's what I dare you to do. Turn it around. Have the audience facing west towards an empty tomb, and when the sun comes up behind them, it illuminates the empty tomb. You're now set up the way God said to set up his services. And you know what's going to happen to you? Everybody's going to come to you and say, you got it backwards. People don't go by God's word. They go by tradition. And the tradition came from when they mashed paganism and Christianity together. Thank you, Constantine. I still love celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, because that's when Jesus won for all of us. I just don't want to do it the papal way. Yep, there you have it. The sun and the cross mashed together by Constantine. Well, the Antichrist is, the Counter-Reformation comes along and the papacy says, hey, we're not Antichrist. Alcazar, he teaches preterism. Hey, no, it's all about a bad guy in the past. Riberi comes along, futurism is a bad guy in the future, except the text says it starts at the breakup of Rome and lasts to the coming of Jesus. It covers all of it. We'll see more as we go along. So following Rome, we have this system. Papal-led Christianity comes up, has 3 phases of conflict: the Crusades, the Ottomans, during the Reformation time, and the time of the end. Yep, it fits. Now, our next presentation will look at the role of the U.S. in this growing conflict. Again, some people say it has a role, some people say it doesn't. I want to ask you to pull out your response envelopes. Every evening, I'm going to ask for your responses, and I hope you will give me some responses. It's your chance to tell me I'm crazy if you want to. Don't worry, I love people that agree and disagree with me. It is not going to offend me. There are two statements tonight. Statement one is really simple. You can circle the yes, the why, the N for no, or you can put down a question mark if you're not sure, or write down something. Statement one is the papacy has led the Christian world in two previous conflicts or holy wars with Islam. First, the Crusades, second, the Ottomans. The papacy has led the Christian world in two previous conflicts or holy wars with Islam. First, the Crusades, second, the Ottomans. Yes, no, or question mark. Number two, the 15 Bible prophecy characteristics identify the papal system, not Catholic people, as the king of the north, little horn, man of sin, and the beast. Yes, no, or question mark. And if you write other, tell me what you're thinking, because I'll get curious. If you have any prayer requests, you can write them on the back. Also, if you want to put a donation in there, you may. But always remember, the gospel is free. You cannot pay for it. However, it costs a lot to give it away, and if you want to help give it away, you can. Now, that said, no arm twisting to put something in there. I'm hoping everybody will drop off that response envelope, with or without any money in it. The money will go to this local church to help them pay for the advertising and materials, and the fee to bring us in. So, they will lose money anyway, folks. But it's not to make money. So just know that nobody knows that there's any donation in there, so don't feel pressured to put something in. Only put it there if you want to. All right? So again, tomorrow, the role of the U.S. in this growing conflict. Then, presentation number 4 is the role of Israel in this growing conflict. And number 5, the role of Islam, Tuesday night, where we put all the pieces together. Let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I am so grateful that you love each and every one of us, no matter which group we come from. Thank you for not being limited by our walls that we build between people. But Lord, help us to learn to love like you do. And help us to avoid persecuting powers. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.